a kind, and it's an amazing event to pioneer something very revolutionary that we don't see happening often with regards to indigenous rights in the Middle East. Outside of the United States, where indigenous rights has largely been pioneered. My name is Justin Feldman. My indigenous name is Yitzhak Sadeh. I'm currently president of Students Supporting Israel at Santa Monica College. I will be here transferring next fall. I'd like to introduce our multiple panelists, but before, I just want to give a little bit of an introduction as to the nature of this event. So many of you understand through academia or through your own experiences speaking with different people, it's not always that we run into indigenous people here. I'd like to recognize that today we are here living on Tongva land. We're studying on Tongva land, so it's important to recognize that. Now, taking that context into the Middle East, where does that stir into the mix? How does that apply? I'd say it largely applies when you have a history of colonialism between different peoples, conquering one another, you could say, and literally suppressing the indigenous histories of various peoples, the rights to self-determination, the rights to be represented, and the rights for their history to remain alive. Now, what you see here are three distinct indigenous Middle Eastern communities. We have the Israeli community represented by Herman Sarafian, president of Students Supporting Israel, okay, here at UCLA. We have Lukman over here. Barwadi.
It's the name of my region.
The name of his region, representing Kurdistan. And we also have, right over here, representing Armenia, Darian Uligian. Okay, I got it right. Great. So with that being said, it's important to understand the narratives of these various peoples, where we come from, and how that has been influenced by various demographics in the region. Having our histories rewritten by colonizers, having our history suppressed and not represented in Western media, as well as disenfranchisement and not having our rights to self-determination, and reclaiming self-determination in as much as we can. So, to finish off, let's give a round of applause. Thank you for being here, and what we're doing today is a very provocative topic, and that's why it's important to bring out there for open conversation and to pioneer new ways for indigenous rights all across the world and for justice for all peoples. Biji Kurdistan. Hayastan. Am Yisrael Hay. So thank you all.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael Leon, and I'm on the board of Students Supporting Israel this year. I was on Students Supporting Israel when I was at SNC as well, and I'm so happy to be part of such an amazing community. So you guys have just all been introduced to the amazing panelists we have today, and before we open up this series of Q&A, we're going to ask them a series of questions and learn a little bit more about each one's background and their connection to their indigenous homeland. So for Lukman and Herman, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do within your indigenous community today? Herman, you can start.
Hey guys, again, my name is Herman Daniel Serafian. I'm the president of Students Supporting Israel at UCLA. I'm also currently the Jewish National Fund's campus fellow here, and I serve on the UCLA Nazarian Center for Israel Studies, Student Advisory Council. I've been involved with Students Supporting Israel for two years now, president for 1 year, and I'm hoping to carry on for another. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. So I see a lot of young people in the audience. I guess I'm probably the oldest one. So I'm a veteran activist, I would say. My name is Lukman Barwari. I'm Kurdish from Kurdistan of Iraq. Later on, we'll talk about a little bit of the history and the background of Kurdistan, so you would get a better perspective as why I say Iraqi Kurdistan. I came to this country way before you all were born, probably. In the 80s, graduated from high school, went to university in Fargo, North Dakota State University. I moved here 1993, got my first position in research at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Beverly Hills. So I'm a scientist. I did the research for about 20 years. I moved to Cedars-Sinai, from Cedars-Sinai to St. Vincent Medical Center, then later on to Philadelphia, again, University of Health Sciences. Then I ended up at UCLA Medical School. I was here for about a year, but I'm not an MD, I'm just a researcher. And I was offered a job at Amgen Biotech, which is one of the biggest biotech companies in Thousand Oaks. That's my science career, and then in alliance with that, I also worked as a Kurdish activist while I was in school as a student, and also working in research. So my activities included started with Kurdish Community Center wherever I was, in different community organizations where the Kurds were living. Then I became a board member of Kurdish National Congress of North America, that is US and Canada. And in 2014 through 2012 to 2014, I was the president of Kurdish National Congress. And then when I retired from Amgen in 2012, I opened the first Kurdish cuisine in Los Angeles. Well, more in northern part of Los Angeles, Agoura Hills. And I was there for 4 years. We were the only Kurdish cuisine, probably in California, fine dining, with great reviews. Even Jonathan Gold wrote about me, so I'm proud to say that. So that's my background, really. Thank you. And thank you for inviting us to be part of this panel.
For Darian, what made you decide to be part of this panel today?
So hi everyone, my name is Darian Olikian. My Armenian name is Dadon Olikian, but when I was younger, my mom was like, yeah, Dadon, cool, good name, but everyone's gonna call him Darren, and she doesn't like that, so I also go by Darian. But my name on my birth certificate is Dadon Olikian. I'm Armenian Lebanese, so I'm Armenian ethnically and Lebanese nationally, along with American nationally. So what that means is that my family is all ethnically Armenian, but my family has lived in Lebanon for the last 4 generations after the genocide in 1915. So I have Lebanese citizenship as well as being born in America, so I also have American citizenship as well. The reason why I decided to participate in this is, one, I know Herman personally, he's a good friend of mine, and so he asked me to speak as a member of the Armenian community. Also, currently, I'm the president of the Undergraduate Student Leadership Council for the Alan DeLevy Center for Jewish Studies here at UCLA. And so through learning a lot about Jewish history, Jewish culture, and being raised around Armenian culture and learning about Armenian history, I've learned a lot about the similarities between Armenians and Jewish people. And so I thought this was a really, really cool event to have us come together and speak about those similarities.
Thank you very much, Darian. To the best of your ability, can you explain the history of your people and their ties to the indigenous land until today? We'll start off with Darian.
So, historical Armenia is located basically in the southern Caucasus Mountains, which is kind of where modern day Armenia is, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and spreads all the way into eastern Turkey, up into around where Mount Ararat is, which is where the biblical story says that Noah's Ark landed. So Armenians like to say that everyone in the world is Armenian because historical Armenia is where the people were reborn again from Noah's Ark, Mount Ararat. But yeah, so because they were in this location, they were subjugated to be conquered and reconquered by multiple different people, whether it was the Persians, Babylonians, Assyrians, the Romans, Russians, you name it, anyone who went through that area conquered them and took them over. So thousands of years before Christ, they were established as a separate ethnic group. And then also we championed the idea that we were actually the first Christian nation. So we were the first nation of people to adopt Christianity as our religion, as part of our culture. And that happened a couple hundred years after the death of Christ. And so from this period still, once that was actually established, it became a little bit worse for us in terms of history, because shortly afterwards, the majority of the countries around us all became Islamic countries, and so we were then not just an ethnic minority, but also a religious minority in the location that we were put upon. And then this culminated all the way up into 1915. And so in April 24th, 1915, Armenia was under the control of the Ottoman Empire. And at that time, the Young Turks, which was the government controlling the Ottoman Empire at the time, decided that they didn't want Armenians in their empire anymore. And so that was the beginning of what is known as the Armenian Genocide. And that was when 1.5 million Armenians were systematically killed during World War I, and that was 75% of the Armenians that were living within the Ottoman Empire at the time perished. And we were forced into diaspora up into this day, and now you can find Armenians, just like many other people in diaspora, all over the world.
So how do you connect, to the best of your ability, can you explain your ties to the indigenous in your history?
My own ties.
No, the ties of your people.
The people, yes. So I actually wrote something for that because I wasn't sure. It's very comprehensive. I mean, I put something down. I wasn't sure exactly how much time we have for this, but I can give a brief description without even making a reference to what I have written. But if you like more what I have written, you have to cope with me to go through the 4 or 5 pages, which is a lot. But I think we'll just not do that. So I think we, the Kurds, have very similar history with the Armenians because we lived side by side. We are also part of that indigenous area. We have gone through many conquerors. Our region has gone through many conquerors. And then the Seljuks, the Turks came, the Mongolian, the Turks came in from the 16th century. The 13th century were, I think, the Seljuks, and then the Islam came to the region and conquered the region. I have to refer to my notes, but I think it was during the 6th century, right? We have a professor here. She can also help me with that. But anyway, so the Kurds were conquered. Basically, our indigenous people have been living there for over 5,000 years. But towards the time when the Turks migrated from Central Asia, they came and they conquered the region, and the Ottoman took over. The Kurdistan was divided in 2 parts. One in Iran, Safavi, and then the other part was under the Ottoman, which was part of Syria today, Iraq, and Turkey. So Kurdistan was 2 parts for many, many years under the Ottomans. And then fast forwarding to the World War I, after the breakdown of the Ottoman empires, then the region, the nations were born there in the Middle East. So there was a treaty, Picard-Circus Treaty in the 1900s, where Britain and French decided to divide the land, the region, after the breakup of the Ottoman, into nation states. So as a result, we had over 22 Arab nation states born. Most of you know what they are. Turkey became a nation state, and then the Kurds were about to be given a land of their own, and there was a Treaty of Sevres that they were giving a sovereign nation, but the Turks, or the Ataturk, actually tricked the Kurds into, no, let's side by, we're all Muslim, let's all fight for our Turkish land. And so the Kurds were sided with them, and then as a result, they annulled the Sevres Treaty in 1923 in Lausanne, and another treaty was born, and that was the formation of today's Turkey. And the Kurds became subject to division between Iraq, Iran, Syria, Turkey, and Iran. So the borders were created, the families were divided, the cousins, for example, in my region, we're bordered right on Turkey in Hakkari and Barwai region. Some cousins ended up in Turkey, the other cousins really ended up in Iraq. And similarly, the same thing happened in Syria and Turkey. And then the Kurds become subject to the repression, discrimination, genocide, because the Turks wanted to create a one unified nation, a Turkish nation. So they went ahead and denied the Kurds their language, their culture, their way of life, even they couldn't wear their clothes. So, those borders were controlled by those nation states, Iraq militarily, Syria militarily, Turkey militarily, Iran militarily. So there was really not much movement. But the Kurds always managed to create, to have porous region, because we are people that we always traded amongst ourselves. So we didn't really let this bother us so much. But as a result, a lot of people, of course, were killed, prosecuted, and our madrasas, our schools were all shut down in Turkey. All the institutions that were Kurdish all shut down in Turkey. And then, of course, the Kurds always tried to revolt their own nation again, but each time they would do, the Turks and the Arabs, the Persians would get together and they persecute us. So anyway, I'll stop here. We'll go probably question and answer later on. We'll talk more about it.
So, just like these other two groups, the Jewish history is very long and very complicated. So, again, I had to write some things down just to remember. But for 3,000 years, we've had a title land of Israel, either in Israel itself or in our different diasporic countries. So, the first record of the first secular record of the people of Israel in Israel is 1200 BC in an Egyptian text, but there's actually been, if you look at the religious texts, we predate 1200 BC by far. So it's up to you to go whichever one you want to. Earliest record is 1200 BCE, but besides that, we lived in two kingdoms in the same area, Israel, the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judea. Israel was in Samaria towards the north, and Judah in the south, in Judea. We've been a people that have been conquered. I mean, I wrote a few down, but I could be missing some. We've been conquered by the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Arabs, the Ottomans, the Assyrians, the Crusaders, and the British. And again, I might still be missing some. So,
Babylonians and Assyrians.
got it. I said it, no?
Yeah.
Babylonian, Assyria. I got it. Thank you. So, with all these different conquerors, there's been different diasporas. So the diaspora, in case you don't know, it's a dispersal of the Jewish people from our homeland. And these diasporas have separated us into, besides the group that stayed in Israel, which is a substantial group, although most of the Jews did leave the area, we're separated into 5 main groups instead of the 2 that's normally recognized, the Sephardim and the Ashkenazim. Again, there's 5. There's the Ashkenazim, which are usually deemed like the European, Sephardim, which is Spanish and Portuguese, Mizrahim, which is Middle Eastern and Central Asia, the Temanim, which are actually the Yemenites, and the Karaim, which are parts of Egypt, Iraq, and Crimea. Again, while we're separated across all these different nations, we all hold the same culture. We diversified a little bit, but all of us practice the same religion. All of us may practice a little bit differently in some ways, but we all follow the same basic culture, the same general structure. Again, there's different unique things. We all look to Jerusalem when we pray. We see Jerusalem as our capital, as our city. For thousands of years, this is where our temples were built, and we always look to our indigenous homeland when talking about our nation, when talking about our people. So for 2,000 years, after the ousting, there's always been different strives for self-determination back in Israel. There's been, the main one that most people know about is Herzl and Zionism, which is 1897. But besides that, there's been, just to name a few, there was actually one in Kurdistan by Rui, I believe in 1160, a Turkish strive by Sabati Zevi in 1648, and a smaller, but it was also successful in getting the Yemenite Jews back into the land of Israel in 1868 by Judah bin Shalom. As far as our modern day history, we look mainly to the San Remo Conference and the Balfour Declaration in establishing the State of Israel. The Balfour Declaration was a British declaration by Lord Balfour, I forget his first name, saying the importance of having a Jewish homeland in our indigenous land. And the San Remo Conference aimed to make a Jewish homeland and an Arab homeland in what is now Israel and Jordan and the West Bank and Judea and Samaria. So in 1947, we were established as a country. In 1947, the UN recommended that the land be partitioned into a Jewish and Arab state. In 1948, we were actually admitted into the UN as the state of Israel. It didn't take more than a few hours for war to erupt against us, but like always, as we have for thousands of years, we survived and we persevered, and here we are today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. So now that we've spoken about the history of your people and their tie to the land, on a personal level, how do you individually connect with that land, and how has that shaped you into being a better activist for your people? We'll start with Herman this time around.
So my personal tie to Israel and how I got involved with SSI is a really long story. So I'll try and cut it down as much as I can. After the diaspora, my family actually moved to the Iranian part of Kurdistan in Sanandaj, and we lived there for thousands of years up until I think the last of us left right after the revolution. So I want to say like 1980s. Actually, I think my dad actually left a little after the revolution. I want to say like 1982. In Sanandaj, we were free. We were happy. We thrived. Actually, we became one of the wealthiest Jewish families of the region. That led us to own half of Sanandaj and the 17 surrounding villages, including the Abidar mountain. But when the revolution came, all of that kind of changed. My family was persecuted for a large part. We lost a lot of family members and those close to our family, and we lost our land. We lost our name. I think there was a street actually with our family name on it, and that's gone now. But so after we were kicked out of, actually 10 years before the revolution, up to about the 90s, we started moving in waves to Israel and, well, mainly Los Angeles. I think it's like 50% of my family is all throughout Israel, and then like 50% of my family is in like a 10-mile radius of here, which is crazy to think about. But in Israel, we had to find a new way. It was a new home, but we were really truly back home where we belonged, where we were displaced for thousands of years. But in Israel in 1972, when the first numbers of my family started moving here, we actually lost a family member. He's an Olympian. He was a wrestler. His name is Amitzur Shapira. He was murdered in the Munich Olympics, and during the second Intifada, we lost 5 more family members to terrorism. One of them was one of my cousins' dads. He was killed during a terrorist attack in the mall, and another one was killed during his daughter's bat mitzvah. My dad left Iran and came here. He was in the States. It took him 3 years to get to the States. He went through all of Europe because he came as a refugee, and he wanted to come to America, so it took him 3 years. And when he came here, he was afraid to be Jewish in a way because of what he went through in Iran. So we didn't live in many Jewish Jewish communities. We lived in smaller cities where we were Jewish, we practiced our religion, but we didn't have that many Jewish friends. We didn't live in big Jewish communities. So moving into high school, me and my sister were the only 2 Jews. And I came to UCLA, and it's completely different. Everywhere I look for me, I can see somebody with a kippah, or somebody just who's Jewish in Hillel or Chabad, wherever, in Jam, wherever. So at the time, I wasn't a huge Israel activist. Israel was in the back of my mind always, but Israel was never really something that I always acted towards. But it was my freshman year when the annual apartheid wall came up that said the Intifada was mostly peaceful. And I remember the 5 family members I lost during the Intifada, and I knew from then that I had to take a stand. And I forgot to mention, but I remembered my grandfather's work with Alliance Israélite Jews Universelle in France. With a Parisian group. He was in Iran, but he worked with the Parisian group in France to bring Jews to Israel. And the last time I saw my grandfather was during my bar mitzvah, when he told me in France, I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact quote in French, but basically what he told me was, if I forget you, Israel, let my right hand lose its skill. I'm butchering it, I know, and I don't remember which psalm it's from, but that was the last memory I have of my grandfather. So from then, anytime, from the time I saw that wall to now, I always remember my grandfather's quote, and I always remember my grandfather's work in my family's history, and that's why I'm doing SSI's work today. Thanks.
Is the question about me or about?
The question is, how do you connect personally to your indigenous dilemma, and how does that shape you? You said you were on the Kurdish or student activism, so how does that shape you as an activist?
Yeah. It's tough to be a Kurd, really. I mean, we're the indigenous people of Middle East here, but I think I would say among the other two indigenous ones, we're probably the less fortunate ones too, because we are our nation, our people, that has one unique, unified history, culture, heritage, was subject to division by force. But every day when I wake up, I don't want to be anything but a Kurd. I am proud to be a Kurd, even though we don't have many friends. There's also a saying that goes like that, the Kurds have no friends but the mountains. Actually, it is just becoming more solidified in my head as I observe the events taking place in Middle East, and the Kurds are fighting the worst terrorist groups, which is called ISIS, and defeating them in both Iraq and Syria. But then yet, we don't really take the credit. The Kurds are always the lost we talk about. So sometimes it's painful, it pains you because you live in America, now an American citizen, taking advantage of all what this country offers. But then again, my folks, my people, I have attachment to my nation. I cannot let go. So I'm from Iraqi Kurdistan. My village is right on the border of Turkey and Iraq. Hakkari is on the Turkish side, or Gülemer, and my region, Barawari, which refers to my last name, is on the south side. So I remember growing up as a kid in this village, the Kurds had their own life for thousands of years. They had their own homes. They were fortunate, and they were living in a beautiful pasture land, mountainous, beautiful rivers, beautiful, we had 3 seasons, so I have great memories of my childhood, of course. But of course, like I said earlier, all this was disrupted, and the Kurds, including myself, my family, and many others, were uprooted. As for myself and my family, my dad decided to join the Iraqi military because for whatever reason he did. Maybe there was some benefits then for him in it. But anyway, so we moved from the village, we went to Mosul. So I was born in Mosul. And then, of course, there were wars between the Iraqi regime and the Kurdish Peshmergas, or the Kurdish political party, which is called Kurdistan Democratic Party. You probably have heard the name of Mullah Mustafa Barzani, who was the leader, who started his revolution in 1946 when he joined the Republic of Mahabad that was born in Mahabad, which is eastern part of Kurdistan, Iranian-occupied Kurdistan. And so these revolts were good in a way, but was also sometimes a curse for the people who were inhabitant of the region, because they were always uprooted. we were, as Kurds, we were disadvantaged. We didn't have the capacity to fight the regimes, the forces that they had, because they were equipped with the sophisticated weapons, etc. But the Kurds didn't have anything but those shotguns. So anyway, my dad, when joined the Iraqi military, was still in the 70s when a war erupted, and then he decided to leave the military and then join the Kurdish freedom fighters, Peshmergas, that were in the scrimmage, the Iraqi regime. During that time, Ba'ath regime had just come to power. Ahmad Hassan Bakr was the president, and Saddam Hussein who was the nephew, he was the prime minister. So we came back to the village, and then of course I remember during that time when the scrimmages were happening, the Iraqi military and air force were flying over our villages and all the other surrounding areas, bombing the region. Of course, I remember in our village we didn't even have electricity. We had no automobiles, really. So my dad decided, okay, so he's not going to stay there. He decided to go and join the major forces where they were on Iranian border and Kurdistan of Iraq border in Haji Umran region. That's where Mullah Mustafa Barzani and his party was stationed. So I remember crossing the Hakkari or the Barwari region by mules, by animals, all the way by feet with my family, crossing and evading the airplanes, of course, during the daytime. And then making it to that region that my dad wanted to be part of the fighting force. So these were all interesting memories when I think about it. I mean, that wasn't too long ago. So I was 6 years old when I first saw a car. So I was walking. I have good memories of it. But anyway, we ended up there, and then the fight intensified in 1974 between Iraqi regime and Kurdistan Democratic Party, Barzani's forces, because they were using the air bombardment. Iran decided to help the Kurds, not because he really wanted to help the Kurds, but he had some dispute with the Iraqi regime, and they were over the Shatt al-Arab or the Hormuz Strait in the Gulf. So the families were taken from Iraqi region, and they become refugees on the other side of the border in eastern Kurdistan, which is the Iranian side. So we were living under the tents for a while Dad stayed behind and continued fighting. This war lasted about a year and a half, and unfortunately the Kurds were betrayed by our own Kissinger, of course, who is also, you guys know who he is, I guess. And there was a pact in March of 1975. What they did actually to the Kurds, America was helping the Kurds to supply the Kurds with weapons through Iran. And the Kurds were fighting fiercely against the Iraqi regime. The Iraqi regime became so weak, so they decided, okay, no, let's go and talk to Shah of Iran and have some settle our differences. Otherwise, this could be a bad thing for the Iraqi regime, and the Kurds may have defeated them and taken the autonomous region. So then in March of 1975, Kissinger, Iran, Iraq, and Saddam Hussein, Iran, Iraq, and Kissinger had a pact in Algiers. It was decided for America and the Iran to abandon the Kurds overnight. And then, as a result, Shah of Iran decided, okay, we're going to give up. No, the Saddam Hussein, we will give up the Hormuz Strait in the Gulf. So the Kurds could not continue fight. Those who were captured, killed, jailed. Those who stayed behind in the camps, the husbands made it back to the camps, and then I remember that Saddam Hussein decided to have the amnesty for the Kurds. Whoever wants to come back, now they can come back to Iraq. But of course, to what Iraq? You know, these are people who are fighting you on the other side, so what are the guarantees that they will stay alive? But anyway, during the whole process, right after that, in the late 70s, Iraqi regime decided that they need to remove all the Kurdish villages, evacuate all the Kurdish villages, and take all the people, the Kurdish people, from the indigenous region, villages that have lived there for thousands of years, take them to Basra, to the south, to Najaf, to Karbala, in the deserts, under the tents. As a result, many Kurds were killed, prosecuted, disappeared. My dad was not able to go back because he had defected from the military, so he was definitely going to be killed. So we decided to stay in Iran. Iran didn't really treat us nice either. They decided to evacuate the camps in the region to move us to the cities. But they decided for us where to go. So I ended up with my family in the city of Qom. You guys probably know where that is. It's, you know, right? It's a religious city where Khomeini is from. It's where there are 14,000 mullahs and they have the biggest madrasa. So imagine being a Kurd, not knowing the language, having long hair, everybody shaves their hair there. Being a Sunni, going to a Shia center. So, and then Savak, which is the secret service of Iran, watches everybody. So we were not really, we were not supposed to visit from one city to the other. We lived there for a while. It was not easy. It was not easy. I mean, I remember going through the revolution of Iran. It was not easy at all. I was lucky. One of my oldest brother were granted asylum in America in 1977. So he came. I was a little boy. I couldn't come. My family couldn't come either. But he was the chosen one. So he came here, and then I've always wanted to come, to leave home. I didn't want to be there. So I came to America in '82. I went through Europe because when I decided to come to America, I couldn't come to America. Why? Because I didn't have a passport in Iran, because I didn't have an identification in Iran. All I could get was a one-page with my picture on it. It was named Lisa Pass. I guess it's French word, means one pass, one-day pass. You can leave the country, but you're not supposed to come back to it. So I signed. I was 16 years old. I think I was even 15. I faked my age because I wanted to get out. So I went to Europe without a visa. During that time, you could actually hop on the plane without a visa. So I did. I just had my ticket and I got on the plane, went to Vienna. I had some family taking me in. And my brother applied for my asylum. And I was granted my asylum after 4 months, but they wouldn't issue me a visa. The US would not issue me a visa. Why? Because I had an Iranian document. Why? Because it was a hostage crisis, and the American has seized all the visas to be issued to anybody who has Iranian documents. So anyway, I had to stay behind, and I stayed there for 1 year and 9 months and made it to America. But you know the rest of the story because I talked about that earlier. I guess I also to you about my activities earlier too. So I will always stay attached to my people, and I live for my people, really. I don't want to be anybody but a Kurd. I don't. So I will remain an activist. I'm hoping that we can make some great friends here. And because later on there will be a question about the difference and similarity. I was thinking about that question as I was coming here. There are some similarities between us, but there are many differences also between the Kurds. And we'll get to that later. Thank you.
Okay, before I begin, I just want to give props to the guy recording all of this. I just my arms hurt for you, the entire time, but don't worry, your shoulders will be super swole afterwards, chill. Alright, so I'll keep this brief. So how I connect to the land of Armenia is, I'd say it's interesting, in that, like I said earlier, the majority of my family has lived in Lebanon for the last 4 generations. So ever since the diaspora began.
Yo, guys, this is my fucking flag.
It's my flag too, man.
I'll finish this on Alright,
moment and understand that in this room, many of us are students. If you
say?
1, 2, 3, 4. Open up the prison doors. 5, 6, 7, 8. Israel is a terrorist.
So Armenia for me is absolutely my homeland, and that was where my ancestors walked the mountains and danced on the hills, and they ate the
It is a sick ideology.
But the idea is that because we are a community of diaspora, Armenia is also carried with us wherever we go.
Supremacy! Fuck white supremacy! Fuck white supremacy! Fuck white supremacy!
I'm not right. Just so it's clear for all of you. I'm not right. In case anybody wasn't sure. In case anybody wasn't sure. I am the only Palestinian. I am not right. Thank you. Just so it wasn't clear.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yo! Hey! Mark!
Was enough shawarma for everybody?
Yo, hey! 14 years old. We saw someone that is 15 years old. 16 years old. No! He's 18 years old. Hey, stop the whistle. Stop. Emmanuel, I just is sick. 19 years old. All of you have to know who the
This is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Jacob, you hungry? You hungry? There's food over here for everybody. We might as well be taking a break. We might as well be taking a break. Actually, this is falafel.
UCLA's police stand on the side of racism. UCLA's police stand on the side of terrorism. UCLA's police stand on the side of the terrorist state of Israel.
Isaac, are you hungry? Hey, who's hungry? Who's hungry? There's some salad. There's pizza.
Thank you for coming. We would like to continue with our event. You're welcome to take a seat and join us. Also, we would like to have a conversation together. I would love to also wave the Palestinian flag with the Israeli flag. I would love to do that. So we'll also schedule a conversation together. That would be really nice. But for all of you who are still here, you can grab a seat and join us. That would be really cool. Thank you. Let's continue.
Yeah, everyone join us.
That is an absurd statement. You are very... How cool was this?
Thank you for whoever staying. You can grab a seat and we'll continue.
I'm not a literal Nazi.
I think, are we getting food now?
Should I report outside too?
You can follow if you want.
Hey guys, but really, since we're taking a break again, you might as well just take food now.
Yeah.
He's part of
right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's fine. Thank you, officer.
I know, wait for now, so it's okay.
No, they want to kill. They don't want to talk. Right on kill.
Should I record outside? Or
I know.
I'm from Israel. No student wants to kill. Don't say it.
Mexico! All the walls have got to go! From Palestine to Mexico! All the walls have got to go! From Palestine to Mexico! All the walls have got to go! From Palestine to Mexico! All the walls have got to go! From Palestine to Mexico!
You should control your events.
It's good this happened. Like this priest and putting back my flag. Yeah, at least there's a beat to it.
just bang on the door. Mom's gonna die inside. It's
I'm glad I got to experience that before I graduated.
It's on Facebook.
Products from UCLA.
Is it still live?
Do you want to continue the event or no?
I know, it's not.